The plasma cannon fire had ceased for exactly 17 minutes, when Commander Vex of the Calthari 4th Fleet gathered his officers in the makeshift command bunker. The acrid smell of melted metal and ozone still hung in the recycled air, but the immediate threat had passed. "For now, gentlemen," Vex began, his 4 eyes scanning the assembled faces of his multispecies command staff, "we need to discuss the humans again." A collective rustle of concern rippled through the group. The Turanian Captain Brix shifted his massive frame uncomfortably. "Sir, their Marines performed admirably in the last engagement. Casualty rates were—" "I'm not talking about their Marines," Vex interrupted, his voice carrying that peculiar mix of respect and unease that had become common among alien commanders whenever humans entered the conversation. "I'm talking about their medics." The silence that followed was profound. Even the ever-present hum of the base's life support system seemed to quiet, as if the machinery itself understood the gravity of what was being discussed. 3 cycles ago, I watched one of their medical personnel, a female called Kate, perform what can only be described as a miracle under fire, Vex continued. The Void Hunters had breached Sector 7. We had wounded scattered across a kilometer of burning landscape, and our own medics had declared the area too dangerous for extraction. He paused, allowing the weight of his words to settle. This human medic, Kate, she didn't just enter the combat zone. She commandeered a damaged hover sled, loaded it with medical supplies, and spent 6 hours pulling wounded soldiers from active battlefields. 6 hours, while plasma fire rained down around her. The Turanian captain leaned forward. "Sir, with respect, our own medics have shown similar courage, have they?" Vex's voice cut through the air like a blade. "When was the last time you saw one of our medics perform emergency surgery on 3 different species simultaneously, using tools she'd never seen before, while enemy artillery exploded overhead?" The question hung in the air unanswered because they all knew the answer. Never. None of them had ever seen anything like what the human medics could accomplish. "The Void Hunters fear our Marines," Vex continued, beginning to pace the small confines of the bunker. "They've learned to respect our tactical superiority and our technological advantages. But the human medics? They represent something else entirely. They represent hope that cannot be extinguished. Every great journey starts with a few brave explorers. Sci-fi stellar conflict is just beginning, and your support means everything. If you're hungry for HFY battles and tales of human valor against alien might, hit subscribe, it's free, and it helps us bring these frontlines to you." Captain Brix spoke carefully. "Sir, what exactly makes them so different?" Vex stopped pacing and turned to face his officers directly. "It's not just their medical knowledge, though that's impressive enough. It's their absolute refusal to accept death as an outcome. When we lose a soldier, we mourn and move on. When they lose a soldier, they take it personally. They treat every life as if it's the most important thing in the universe." He activated the holographic display, showing battlefield footage from the recent engagement. The image of Kate appeared, her human medical uniform stained with the blood of a dozen different species, her hands steady as she worked to save a wounded Calthari soldier. "Watch this," Vex said quietly. She'd been working for 14 straight hours when this was recorded. Her own species' adrenaline should have failed her hours ago. But look at her hands, look at her eyes. She's not just treating wounds, she's fighting death itself, and she's winning. The assembled officers watched in fascination as Kate performed what appeared to be an impossible surgical procedure, her movements precise and confident, despite the chaos surrounding her. She moved from patient to patient with relentless efficiency, her voice calm and reassuring as she coordinated with alien medical staff who clearly viewed her with something approaching reverence. "The enemy has learned to target our command structures, our supply lines, our communication networks," Vex explained. "But they've also learned something else. If they want to truly demoralize us, they need to eliminate the human medics. Because as long as those medics are operating, our soldiers know they have a chance. Not just of survival, but of going home whole." The weight of this revelation settled over the command staff like a heavy blanket. They had all heard the stories, of course, but seeing the evidence laid out so starkly was different. "Sir," asked the communications officer, a young Villani named Kip, Are you saying the human medics are changing the nature of warfare itself? Vex nodded slowly. That's exactly what I'm saying. And if we're going to continue fighting alongside them, we need to understand what that means for all of us. The memory that haunted Commander Vex most wasn't from the recent battle, but from Kate's first deployment with alien forces 8 months earlier. He had been skeptical then, as most commanders were when the Galactic Alliance first began integrating human medical personnel into their units. A human medic? He had asked Admiral Torvin during their pre-deployment briefing. Are we so desperate that we're now trusting our wounded to a species that's been part of the Alliance for less than 2 years? Admiral Torvin had simply smiled. That knowing smile that senior officers reserve for moments when they're about to watch a subordinate learn something important. Give her a chance, Vex. I think you'll find the experience educational. Kate had arrived with the second wave of reinforcements. A compact human female with short brown hair and eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. She carried herself with the quiet confidence that Vex had learned to associate with experienced combat medics. But there was something else, an intensity that made even veteran soldiers step aside when she passed. Her first real test came during what should have been a routine patrol. The Void Hunters had laid an ambush in the Carrion Gorge, and by the time Vex's forces fought their way out, they had 7 wounded soldiers and no way to reach the main field hospital for at least 4 hours. The worst casualty was a Turanian heavy gunner named Thad, who had taken a plasma blast to his torso. The alien medics had examined him quickly and made their pronouncement. Too much damage to his primary organs, too much blood loss, and no compatible surgical equipment for his species. He would die within the hour. Kate had knelt beside the massive soldier, her hands moving over his wounds with professional efficiency. No, she had said simply. He won't. Human, the senior alien medic had protested. You don't understand Turanian physiology. His primary heart is destroyed, his lung cavity is collapsed, and we don't have the proper surgical tools for his species. Kay had looked up at him with those intense eyes. Then we improvise. What followed was the most remarkable display of medical improvisation Vex had ever witnessed. Using a combination of human surgical techniques, alien medical supplies, and tools she'd scavenged from damaged equipment, Kate had performed what amounted to a complete reconstruction of Thad's chest cavity. She worked for 3 hours straight, her hands never shaking, her voice calm as she explained each step to the alien medics who had gathered to watch. When she needed an instrument that didn't exist, she made one. When she encountered anatomy she'd never seen before, she adapted. When the situation seemed impossible, she found a way. The key, she had explained while working, is understanding that biology follows certain universal principles. Hearts pump, lungs exchange gas, blood carries oxygen. The specifics might be different, but the fundamentals remain the same. Halfway through the surgery, enemy fire had resumed. Plasma bolts screamed overhead, and the makeshift operating area shook with each nearby explosion. The alien medics had looked around nervously, ready to evacuate. Kate hadn't even paused. Someone get me better light, she had said calmly. I can't see what I'm doing. By the time she finished, Thad was not only alive but conscious. The Turanian soldier had looked up at her with wonder in his eyes and spoken in heavily accented Standard. You brought me back. I didn't bring you back, Kate had replied, already moving to check on the other wounded. I just refused to let you go. That phrase had become something of a legend among the alien forces. The human medics didn't just treat patients, they refused to let them go. It was a subtle but profound difference that changed everything about how the troops viewed combat. After that, Vex explained to his officers, the word spread through the entire battle group. The human medic could save anyone, fix anything, pull soldiers back from the very edge of death. Morale improved dramatically, but more importantly, so did combat effectiveness. Captain Brix leaned forward. How do you mean, sir? Simple, Vex replied. When soldiers know they have a real chance of survival, they fight differently. They take calculated risks instead of desperate ones. They support each other better because they know that even if someone gets hurt, there's hope. The holographic display shifted to show casualty statistics from before and after Kate's arrival. The numbers were striking. Not only had deaths decreased, but the severity of wounds had actually increased. Soldiers were staying in fights longer, pushing harder, because they trusted their medic to put them back together. The Void Hunters noticed the change immediately, Vex continued. Their intelligence reports started flagging human medical personnel as priority targets. They began developing specific tactics to isolate and eliminate medics during combat. The implications were sobering. The enemy had recognized what the alien commanders were only beginning to understand. Human medics weren't just medical personnel. They were force multipliers that fundamentally changed the nature of warfare. "Sir," asked Kip, "if they're targeting our medics specifically, shouldn't we be providing them with additional protection?" Vex almost smiled. "That's what we thought too." Kate's response was educational. The battle for Outpost Kali had been raging for 18 hours when the Void Hunters launched their final assault. They came in 3 waves, each more devastating than the last, with a singular focus that had become their trademark: find and eliminate the human medics. Kate had established her field hospital in what used to be the outpost's mess hall, its reinforced walls providing better protection than most other structures. She had commandeered every available surface, turning dining tables into operating tables and storage alcoves into recovery bays. The space bustled with activity as medical personnel from 4 different species worked under her coordination. "Incoming!" "Wounded!" shouted Corporal Mason, a human marine who had appointed himself Kate's unofficial bodyguard. "Convoy from Sector 4, multiple casualties." Kate looked up from the Villani soldier she was treating, her hands never pausing in their work. "Prep tables 3 and 4. Get me a full surgical kit and someone who knows Kalthari anatomy." The wounded arrived in a rush of blood and chaos. Kate moved between them with practiced efficiency, her eyes taking in wounds, her mind calculating priorities. A human marine with a severed arm. A Kalthari officer with internal bleeding. A Turanian soldier with severe burns across 40% of his body. "Standard triage protocols don't apply here," she announced to her team. "We're not choosing who lives and who dies. We're figuring out how to save everyone." The alien medics exchanged glances. This was pure human thinking, the absolute refusal to accept acceptable losses. Any other species would have focused on the patients with the best chances of survival. Kate started with the Turanian burn victim, a case that would normally be considered hopeless. His name was Gorth, and he was barely conscious when they brought him in. The alien medics had already begun preparing palliative care. "No," Kate said firmly, beginning to cut away burned tissue. "He's young, he's strong, and his vitals are stable. We can save him." She worked with a combination of human burn treatment techniques and alien regenerative therapies, creating a hybrid approach that none of the alien medics had considered. As she worked, she explained her reasoning to the watching medical staff. "Turanian skin has a higher concentration of regenerative cells than human skin," she said, carefully applying a synthetic membrane. "But their pain receptors are distributed differently. If we can manage the inflammation and provide proper cellular scaffolding, their natural healing response will do most of the work." The procedure took 2 hours, during which Kate never left Gorth's side. She monitored his vital signs, adjusted his medications, and spoke to him in his own language, phrases she had learned specifically for treating Turanian patients. When Gorth finally stabilized, Kate immediately moved to the next patient. Then the next, then the next. She worked without rest, without pause, driven by that relentless human determination that had become legendary among the alien forces. Commander Vex had arrived at the field hospital during the height of the battle, ostensibly to check on his wounded soldiers, but actually to observe Kate in action. What he saw challenged every assumption he had about medical care and combat effectiveness. "She's been working for 26 straight hours," he reported to his officers. "No sleep, minimal food, constant stress. Any other species would have collapsed by now." But Kate showed no signs of fatigue. If anything, she seemed to gain energy from the chaos around her. She moved from patient to patient with unwavering focus, her hands steady, her voice calm and reassuring. The real test came when the Void Hunters breached the outer perimeter. Enemy fire began hitting the medical facility, and evacuation protocols were activated. The alien medics began preparing to move the most stable patients while leaving the critical cases behind. Kate's response was immediate and uncompromising. Nobody moves, nobody gets left behind. But the protocols, one of the alien medics began. I don't care about protocols, Kate interrupted. I care about my patients. We hold this position. She activated the facility's emergency shields and began organizing a defensive perimeter using walking wounded and medical support staff. While enemy fire rained down around them, she continued performing surgery, her concentration unbroken. By the chaos. This is insane, muttered one of the alien medics. We should evacuate. Kate looked up from her patient, her eyes blazing with determination. You want to know what's insane? Abandoning wounded soldiers because it's convenient. That's insane. This is just medicine under difficult circumstances. The battle raged for another 4 hours. During that time, Kate performed 7 major surgeries, treated dozens of minor wounds, and coordinated the medical care of over 100 patients. She never faltered, never showed doubt, never accepted that any situation was hopeless. When the Void Hunters finally retreated, Kate was still working. She had saved every patient brought to her field hospital, not just the ones with good chances, but all of them. The impossible had become routine under her care. Commander Vex stood in the doorway, watching Kate suture a minor wound on a young Volani soldier. She was humming softly, her movements gentle and precise, as if she were working in a peaceful hospital rather than a battle-scarred field station. How do you do it? He asked quietly. Kate looked up, her expression calm despite the exhaustion that should have been overwhelming. Do what? All of this. The impossible saves, the endless energy, the refusal to accept defeat. She considered the question seriously. I suppose it's because I've never really thought of it as impossible. Every patient is someone's son or daughter, someone's friend or lover. They trust me to bring them home alive. How can I do anything less than everything? The moment that would define Kate's legend came during the final phase of the battle, when the Void Hunters played their last, desperate card. They had learned to target human medics specifically, but they had also learned something else. The surest way to demoralize an entire battle group was to force a human medic to make an impossible choice. The enemy assault had been carefully planned. A precision strike team had infiltrated the outer perimeter and captured 2 wounded soldiers. Marine Lieutenant Jake Porter, a human, and Wing Commander Thane, a Kalthari officer. Both were critically wounded, both were dying, and both had been placed in a position where Kate could reach only one of them. The message came through on an open channel, broadcast to every unit in the battle group. Human medic, you have 5 minutes to choose. Save your own species or save the alien. You cannot save both. Kate listened to the transmission in silence, her face showing no emotion. Around her, the field hospital had gone quiet. Everyone, human and alien alike, understood the psychological warfare being waged. The enemy wanted to prove that human loyalty was ultimately tribal, that their famous medical dedication had limits. Kate, came Jake's voice over the comm. Weak but determined. Don't you dare try to save me. Thane has a family, kids. He's worth more than— Shut up, Jake, Kate replied calmly, already moving toward her equipment. Nobody gets to decide who's worth more than anyone else. Commander Vex had been monitoring the situation from the command center. Kate, you need to understand, this is obviously a trap. They want to demoralize our forces by making you choose. Then, they've made a mistake, Kate replied, her voice carrying that particular tone that had become familiar to everyone who had worked with her. They assumed I would choose. She began gathering medical supplies with systematic efficiency. Not the standard emergency kit, but specific items that seemed random to the watching alien medics. Synthetic blood plasma, neural stimulants, a portable surgical laser, and something none of them recognized, a device that looked like a cross between a defibrillator and a quantum computer. What is that? Asked Dr. Kell, the senior alien medic. Something I've been working on, Kate replied, checking the device's power levels. A neural link stabilizer. It's designed to maintain brain function in 2 patients simultaneously by creating a temporary biological bridge. The implications were staggering. You're going to link their nervous systems? Temporarily, Kate confirmed. long enough to perform surgery on both of them using their combined biological resources. Jake's human physiology can compensate for Thane's damaged organs, while Thane's Kalthari healing factors can help repair Jake's injuries. Dr. Kell stared at her in disbelief. That's completely theoretical. The risk of neural feedback alone could kill both of them, Kate finished. But they're dying anyway. This gives them a chance. She was already moving toward the exit, her equipment pack secure on her back. I need a 3-person team, volunteers only. This is going to be dangerous. Every medic in the facility stepped forward. Kate selected her team quickly. Dr. Kell for his expertise in Kalthari physiology, Corporal Mason for security, and a young Velani medic named Pix who had shown exceptional skill with complex surgical procedures. The rescue mission took them through 2 kilometers of contested territory. The Void Hunters had established overlapping fields of fire, forcing Kate's team to move carefully from cover to cover. Enemy snipers tracked their movement, but something strange happened. The alien forces began providing covering fire without being asked. All units, this is Commander Vex, came the voice over the comm. Provide support for the medical team. Priority override on all other operations. The battlefield shifted. Instead of individual units fighting separate engagements, the entire battle group began coordinating to create a corridor for Kate's team. Terranian heavy weapons suppressed enemy positions. Kalthari fighters provided air cover, and human marines advanced to secure the flanks. Kate barely noticed the coordinated effort around her. Her focus was entirely on the mission ahead. When they finally reached the enemy position, she found both wounded soldiers in exactly the condition she had expected, dying, but not dead yet. Jake, Thane, can you hear me? She called as she began setting up her equipment. Kate, Jake's voice was barely a whisper. Don't risk it. Just save Thane and get out of here. Not happening, Kate replied, already beginning the neural link. Procedure. You're both going home. The process was unlike anything anyone had ever attempted. Kate connected both patients to her experimental device, creating a temporary biological bridge between their nervous systems. Jake's human resilience began supplementing Thane's failing Kalthari physiology, while Thane's advanced healing factors started working on Jake's injuries. This is impossible, Dr. Kell muttered, watching the readings on his instruments. Their biological systems are completely incompatible. They are individually, Kate replied, her hands moving with precise efficiency as she began operating on both patients simultaneously. But together, they're creating something new. Something stronger than either species alone. The surgery took 3 hours. During that time, Kate performed procedures that would have been impossible under normal circumstances. She repaired Jake's damaged organs using techniques adapted from Kalthari medicine, while healing Thane's injuries with methods derived from human surgical practices. But the most remarkable thing was the patients themselves. The neural link had created an empathic connection between them, allowing each to share the other's strength and determination. Jake's human stubbornness reinforced Thane's Kalthari resilience, while Thane's tactical thinking enhanced Jake's survival instincts. When Kate finally disconnected the neural link, both patients were stable. Not just alive, but recovering at a rate that defied medical understanding. How? Dr. Kell asked, staring at the readings in amazement. Kate smiled for the first time in hours. Because they refused to let each other die. Just like we refused to let them die. The rescue team made it back to the field hospital without further incident. The Void Hunters had withdrawn, their psychological warfare having backfired spectacularly. Instead of breaking human resolve, they had demonstrated it in the most powerful way possible. 6 months after the Battle of Outpost Kali, Commander Vex found himself in a position he never expected, briefing the entire Galactic Alliance High Command about why human medics had become the most feared enemy asset in the galaxy. The assembled commanders represented every major species in the Alliance, and their expressions ranged from skeptical to fascinated as Vex began his presentation. The holographic display showed tactical analyses, casualty statistics, and battlefield footage that painted a picture of warfare fundamentally changed by human medical personnel. The data is unambiguous, Vex explained. highlighting key statistics. Units operating with human medics show a 60% increase in combat effectiveness, a 70% reduction in fatalities, and most significantly, a complete transformation in tactical doctrine. Admiral Torvin, the Kalthari commander, who had first introduced Kate to Vex's unit, leaned forward. "Explain that last point." "Traditional military doctrine accepts a certain level of casualties as inevitable," Vex replied. "Human medics have made that assumption obsolete. When soldiers know they have a real chance of survival, they fight differently. They take calculated risks, they support each other better, and they never give up." The display shifted to show battlefield footage of the neural link surgery Kate had performed. The assembled commanders watched in silence as the procedure unfolded, their expressions growing more amazed with each passing minute. "This single operation changed everything," Vex continued. "Not just because it saved 2 lives, but because it demonstrated something that has terrified the enemy. Human medics will not accept defeat. They will not make compromises. They will not abandon patients, even when the situation seems hopeless." General Karth, the massive Turanian who commanded the Alliance's ground forces, spoke up. "You're saying that human medical personnel are affecting enemy strategy?" "I'm saying they're rewriting the rules of warfare," Vex replied. "The Void Hunters have begun developing specific tactics to target human medics, but they're also making strategic decisions based on the assumption that human medical support will be available. They're planning for scenarios where their psychological warfare fails because human medics refuse to accept defeat." The presentation continued for another hour, with Vex detailing case after case of human medics achieving the impossible. There was Kate's emergency surgery on a Vellani officer using tools she had never seen before. There was Dr. Marcus Reed, who had performed battlefield amputations and reconstructions that alien medics considered miraculous. There was Captain Lisa Chun, who had established a field hospital inside an active combat zone and refused to evacuate even when enemy fire made the position untenable. "The pattern is consistent across all human medical personnel," Vex explained. "They approach medicine not as a science of probabilities, but as a war against death itself. They take every loss personally, they refuse to accept limitations, and they view every patient as worth any risk." Admiral Torvin nodded thoughtfully. "And this is affecting enemy morale?" "Devastatingly," Vex replied. "Void Hunter prisoners consistently report that their greatest fear is not our weapons or our tactics, but our medics. They know that as long as human medical personnel are operating, our forces will continue fighting no matter how badly they're hurt. It's psychologically crushing for an enemy that depends on breaking our will to fight." The briefing concluded with a recommendation that would reshape Alliance military doctrine. Human medics should be integrated into every major combat unit, not just as medical support, but as force multipliers that fundamentally change the nature of warfare. 3 weeks later, Kate received the Alliance Medal of Honor, the highest decoration available to non-combat personnel. The ceremony was held aboard the flagship of the Alliance fleet, with representatives from every member species in attendance. As she stood before the assembled dignitaries, Kate looked remarkably unchanged from the woman who had arrived at Commander Vex's unit 8 months earlier. She still carried herself with that quiet confidence, still had those intense eyes that seemed to see everything at once. "The Alliance recognizes your extraordinary service," Admiral Torvin announced as he placed the medal around her neck. "Your innovations in battlefield medicine have saved countless lives and changed the nature of warfare itself." Kate's response was characteristically direct. "Thank you, sir. But I didn't do anything special. I just refused to let people die." After the ceremony, as the various dignitaries mingled and celebrated, Kate slipped away to the medical bay. She had received word that wounded soldiers from the latest engagement were being transferred to the flagship, and she wanted to be there when they arrived. Commander Vex found her there an hour later, already working on a young Vellani soldier who had taken shrapnel to his chest. Her hands moved with that same steady precision that had become legendary, her voice calm and reassuring as she explained the procedure to the alien medical staff. "Shouldn't you be at your own celebration?" Vex asked quietly. Kate glanced up without pausing in her work. "This is my celebration. Every patient I save, every life I preserve, that's what matters. She returned her attention to the wounded soldier, her complete focus on the task at hand. Besides, I got word that we're deploying to the Outer Rim next week. There's a whole sector out there that hasn't seen human medics yet. Vex watched her work, understanding finally why the enemy feared human medics more than human marines. It wasn't just their medical skill or their refusal to accept defeat. It was their absolute, unshakable belief that every life was worth saving, that no sacrifice was too great if it meant bringing someone home alive. Across the galaxy, in command centers and battlefields, alien commanders were coming to the same realization. Human medics weren't just medical personnel, they were hope incarnate, the living embodiment of a species that refused to accept that anything was impossible. The war against the Void Hunters was far from over, but the tide had turned. And at the center of that change were human medics like Kate, who approached every patient with the same unwavering determination. Nobody gets left behind, nobody gets abandoned, and nobody dies on their watch. In the end, that was the most human thing of all, the absolute refusal to give up, even when the universe itself seemed determined to prove them wrong.